So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fourth in our episode in our webinar series with Tennessee History Day and Teaching with Primary Sources at MTSU. We're really excited to have everyone joining us again this morning for today's session. So just a few quick reminders for folks. One, like I mentioned, if you would please keep your mics muted. The reason we're doing that, we are recording these sessions to post for folks to view later on who might not be able to join us live. Those are being posted on our Teaching with Primary Sources MTSU YouTube channel. Also, if you would, check and make sure that the name that's popping up on the participant list is both your first and last names. So find yourself there. You can scroll out from it. You'll see where it says more, and you should be able to rename yourself there. And this is just really helpful for us. Hannah is going to be taking attendance in the middle and towards the end of the session, and so that will help her to check off that you have attended live with us. We are working to make these sessions as interactive as possible. As I mentioned, if you will go ahead and find that chat box, that's going to be the best way to interact with us throughout the session. Again, throw out questions, add in comments about your own experiences, chat with each other, regarding the content that we're talking about. Again, just make use of that chat box. During the session, Jennifer, Hannah, myself, Layla, and Stacy Graham will be responding to things as they come up. Also, you have reaction buttons, so you should have a hands clapping or a thumbs up. You can make use of those during the session. And we will have one poll today for you guys to respond to. For those of you who will be viewing, might be viewing later on the recording of this, the poll will not show up in the recording, but we will be narrating that so that you'll be able to at least hear the question. And again, you'll be able to find all of the resources used in today's session on our Padlet that we've created for this webinar series. You'll find the resource actually for all of our webinars in this series. And the link is there as well as the QR code so that you can find that. And we'll continue to add to that as we're going through the series. And again, this is the fourth in our sessions for the series. Today we're going to be talking about the National History Day theme and rulebook for next year. Next week, we'll come back and talk about historical context and National History Day as an extracurricular activity or as a classroom project. So that's the two scheduled for next week. If you happen to miss one of our earlier sessions, again, those recordings are up and available for you to view whenever you have a chance to do so. And we encourage you to do that. All right, so that is kind of our housekeeping. So I think we're ready to get started. And I'm going to be turning things over to Hannah, who is assisting with History Day now with the Tennessee Historical Society. So Hannah, turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am excited to share some information with you about Tennessee history, the Tennessee History Day competition and National History Day, and Jennifer is sharing our PowerPoint now. Okay. All right, looks like it is up and ready to view. So for today's webinar, we're going to go over the 2021 National History Day theme. We are also going to talk about the new rulebook, the new rubrics, and go over a project checklist. So really we're going to do a bit of a crash course in what is National History Day. So I'll be presenting the first half and then Jennifer's going to present the second half. So for the agenda today, we're going to first talk about what is National History Day and sort of the divisions and what students, what projects they might have in different categories. And then we're going to go over the 2021 theme, which is communication and history, the key to understanding. And then Jennifer is going to go over the rulebook, changes and rules summary, the judging rubrics for this year, as well as project checklists and resources.
We have a poll for you to take. I'm going to launch it now. We just want to know if you've participated in History Day before. So we're aware that some of you have not. So the first part where Hannah's talking is going to be a crash course in what History Day is. We're going to hopefully entice you into trying it out this year. Some of the changes that we talk about are going to be more pertinent to those of you who've done it before. Okay, I'm going to end the polling now, and it looks like about 25% or 23% of you have participated in History Day before, and 77% of you have not. So we have a webinar full of people who are fairly new to History Day.
Awesome. So hopefully we'll be able to give you some information that'll kind of get you started and what History Day is and how you can incorporate it into your classroom. And of course, those of you that are returning that have participated in History Day, hopefully we'll be able to give you some updated information that will help your students prepare their projects for this year. So what is National History Day? This is a year-long history education program that focuses on students that are grades 6 through 12, and it encourages project-based learning. So each student or group of students, if they decide to do a group project, will pick a topic based on that year's theme, which we'll talk about in a moment, and then they spend an entire year developing their project. And this is encouraging use of a wide array of different sources and resources that the teacher will sort of help them through in finding those resources, but is really focused on the student being able to create their own research. It's an opportunity for students to learn history by engaging in hands-on historical research based on whichever topic that they pick. And this can be a local history topic, it can be a world topic, it can be something that has impacted the entire world, like the internet, or it could be the development of a newspaper that was local to where they grew up. So it really just depends on what the interest of the student is. So there are two divisions students can compete in based on their grade level. So there is the junior division, which includes grades 6 through 8, and the senior division, which includes grades 9 through 12. And students can compete in multiple different levels while they are creating their project. So they will start on maybe the school level, and then they will move on to the district level. And if they medal in the district level, they will come to Nashville and compete at the state level. And if they medal at the state level, they will then move on to nationals. So in a non-COVID year, of course, the state competition is held in Nashville by Tennessee History Day. And then the national competition is held at the University of Maryland in College Park. And this is about 12 miles from Washington, D.C. So they will be able to travel in and to do a wider range of really fun activities, especially for a student that's never traveled outside of Tennessee before. So it's a really exciting opportunity for them. So within National History Day, the projects can focus on 5 different categories. So you're either making a project that is a documentary, an exhibit, a performance, a website, or a paper. And each of these categories, with the exception of paper, allow for students to create an individual or a group project. And groups are usually 2 to 5 students, or they have to be between 2 and 5 students. Of course, papers are done individually. And this just depends on what your student is interested in and where their strengths lie. And so that may be something you can help your student figure out. So this past Tennessee History Day year, so our students that participated in National History Day, it was a completely virtual competition, but we had great participation. Before we sort of went into COVID closures, we did have regional contests. So all of the regional contests were held in person and were normal. And then the state contests moved on to virtual. So at the local level, all across the state, we reached 8,300 students. At the district and regional level, we had 1,350 students participate. At the state level, we had 290 students participate in our virtual competition. And at the national level, we had 69 students go on to participate in the virtual National History Day competition. So as far as the History Day theme, it does change every single year. And the theme is really sort of the guiding voice that's going to take them throughout their project. So this past year, the 2020 theme was Breaking Barriers in History. And this year it's going to be focused on communications. And this is the first aspect of the project that judges will examine. So the very first thing that students need to be really focused on is, how does my project fit into this theme? And each student will have to write what we call a process paper. And this goes over how the student chose their theme, how the student chose their topic, how that incorporates into the theme for this year, how they got their resources. And probably the very first thing they need to be talking about, and probably the most important, is how did you choose this topic and how does it fit into the theme this year? And as it says here in the slide, this is sometimes where students miss points. This is what decides first from second, third from fourth, especially on the state level and on the national level. So they really need to have a good historical argument that fits their topic into their theme. So this year's theme is Communication and History, the Key to Understanding. And the theme this year is asking students to consider how people exchange information and how they interact with one another. So we have a theme narrative, which is a 3-page handout, and it is suitable for classroom use. And it sort of goes through what the overall theme is about, how students should be tying it into their topics, how they should focus their topics on this theme, and gives some really great examples. So they're going to explore the methods and modes of communication this year that have changed over time and how they have shaped our present society. Excuse me. Also, there is a theme book, which is 68 pages of essays from NHD staff and partners that focuses on different resources or different topics that you may use for this theme. So there are some obvious examples as far as communications, such as the invention of the telephone or the telegraph or the television or the internet. But National History Day, and they explain this in the theme book, is really encouraging students to think about how words and thoughts and ideas are used to really impact social and political landscapes in history. Jennifer and I were talking about this morning. This theme is a little bit more ambiguous than last year's theme. So breaking barriers in history is pretty straightforward. Our students chose topics that broke a certain barrier for people or for societies in history. This theme this year, I think, is a little bit more open to interpretation. And as Jennifer told me this morning, this is part of what the students are judged on. How did they interpret this theme? And then use their topic to argue for how communication changed a certain social aspect or political aspect. And so in the theme book, NHD gives a great example of how the development of the printing press allowed for written material to be produced to everyone. So it wasn't just the elite reading anymore. And how did that communication impact the social landscape at the time? So this will be a theme where you really have to encourage your students to dig deep and put their topic in sort of a really strong historical argument for how communications changed a certain part of history for them. So some other, So you can also use a graphic organizer, and this is encouraged to use in the classroom. Usually you want your students to do this about 3/4 of the way through in their project, and it can be used as a grade. And you can also have them do it again. So they do it at 3/4 the way through their project, and then they might do it again after their project is finished and ready to be submitted to a competition. And it's 3 pages long, and it just encourages your student to write down on paper, what is your theme? How does it tie into, or what is your topic? How does it tie into the theme? What are the parameters? And it helps them move through the research process. So now we are going to view the 2021 History Day theme introductory videos. So NHD is going to walk you through their thought process for how they chose this theme and what ways it might play out in your students' projects. And I think it's about 8 minutes long.
Hello everyone out there in History Day land. I'm Kathy Korn, Executive Director of National History Day, and I'm pleased to announce the officially launched 2021 National History Day.
Make sure that it's sharing your computer audio because it's real quiet. It's hard to hear.
Jennifer, did you get that?
If you pull up where it says share screen At the bottom there, in the bottom right-hand corner, you should have a button there to click that will say share computer audio.
This video is going to give you a few ideas just to get your thoughts moving a little bit. So listen up, think.
Throughout history, people have communicated to exchange ideas and information. Major inventions, telephone, telegraph, and television quickly come to mind, but communication is so much more than that.
After his election in 1933, President Franklin Roosevelt inherited a nation in the grip of the Great Depression, with high rates of unemployment and runs on banks. He responded with his fireside chats, radio addresses where he spoke directly to the American people.
Okay, so are you all having trouble hearing this?
Yeah, is there an option to turn on the subtitles? That way we could read it as well.
Is it under the more?
It might just be the CC button right there on your YouTube screen.
Okay.
Closed captions, that way we can read it too if we're having trouble hearing it.
Okay. So in looking at the video, share computer sound.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to back it up a little bit. Sorry about that. I'll go back here. So the first part was just Kathy Gorin saying hello. Oh, probably want to unmute it. Okay, try it again.
After his election in 1933, President Franklin Roosevelt inherited a nation in the grip of the Great Depression, with high rates of
Hey,
unemployment.
I think you need to do a new share because we don't see the screen anymore.
Fireside chats, radio addresses where he spoke directly to the American people.
What was the impact of these chats? How did the American people react to them? Did the fireside chats change how future presidents communicated? How and why?
Newspapers are often a key part of historical research. There are many ways in which newspapers have had an impact in history. How were newspapers used to influence politics, debates, and opinions? As we prepare for the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence in 2026, we can explore newspapers to trace the nation's debates, challenges, and celebrations. How do newspapers preserve a record of American public debate? To learn more, check out the Chronicling America database. This collection of digitized newspapers from across the nation was created through a partnership between the Library of Congress and the National Endowment for the Humanities, and is accessible at chroniclingamerica.loc.gov. Much of history is preserved in the written records of those who came before us. Their letters, diaries, and records give us insight into the past. When the U.S. Postal Service was formed, it provided a way for Americans to communicate across the nation. But who created the Postal Service and why? How has it impacted social, political, and economic life?
The Library of Congress's article in the theme book includes links to the digitized papers of Alexander Graham Bell, most famous for his work on the telephone. But students may be surprised to learn about his interest in scientific and aeronautical research, as well as his interest in educational opportunities for students with hearing impairments. How did Bell's correspondence with other inventors, like Guglielmo Marconi and the Wright brothers, influence their inventions? Find a topic that examines the impact of the telephone on an event in history.
Since the 1800s, World's Fairs have highlighted the many achievements of nations. The exhibitions often showcase popular culture, trade, science, and technology. How did nations use world expositions or World's Fairs to communicate their progress and achievements to the rest of the world? Did World's Fairs reveal flaws of a nation? Did they create rivalries or divides between nations?
Other students might look to protests where individuals gathered to challenge unsafe working conditions or restrictive voting laws. Protests are a form of democratic communication which help the voice of the people be heard. How did protests influence change in the women's suffrage movement, the environmental movement, or the civil rights movement?
Sometimes communication is cultural exchange. Students might explore the early diplomatic relationship between the United States and Japan. The voyage of Commodore Matthew Perry is important, but so is the delegation of Japanese diplomats who returned to Washington, D.C. in 1860 to meet with President James Buchanan and formalize diplomatic relations between the two nations. What impact did it have?
In the wake of the U.S. Civil War, newly freed African Americans used federal agencies like the Southern Claims Commission and the Freedmen's Bureau to communicate with the federal government. How can the records of these claims provide insight into the challenges faced by these men and women? How did they try to communicate with the government to ensure their rights?
Communication is at the heart of the political process. Leaders, legislatures, and courts communicate with their people to maintain their power and explain their laws and decisions. In democratic nations, leaders debate to be elected by the people or their representatives and hold power. How did new inventions like the radio or the television play a role? What other ways have political parties communicated with the public? What was their impact?
There are more than 5,000 languages spoken around the world today. They help us to express ourselves, but not all languages are spoken. How has American Sign Language contributed to both cultural and linguistic diversity? Students might also think about restrictions placed on language. The native Hawaiian language faced heavy restrictions following the overthrow of Queen Liliuokalani in 1893. How does the suppression of language impact a group of people? How did these restrictions change the nature of communication across the Hawaiian Islands? What happens when there's a resurgence of the language and a push to learn the language again?
History shows us the dangers of lack of communication, miscommunication, and misunderstanding. But they too can provide key moments for historical study. Consider the explosion aboard the USS Maine in Havana Harbor in 1898 and the ways in which it led to the Spanish-American War. How did newspapers play a role?
It is often challenging to communicate in times of conflict, but history shows us the importance of this communication. It is imperative that communication be received and understood. While we do not always agree with what we hear, it is important that we have the skills to understand the perspective and points of view expressed in the past.
Well, I hope we got your thoughts moving around a little bit. You've just taken the first step toward completing a 2021 NHD project. Check out our website at www.nhd.org. You can find our brand new theme book there, and you can download it, or if you're like me and you'd rather have the goods in your hands, you can order one online through the NHD shop. I can't wait to see what great topics you choose and the way you present your information. For now, good luck and happy researching.
Okay, so that video is available on NHD's website. It's also available on our website. You can share it with your students. It would be a good introduction to this year's theme. Dr. Gorn mentioned purchasing a rule book. We will buy one for you if you want. In the past, we have automatically sent out a packet of information to all people who've participated in History Day before, and we've also given packets to people who've come to our summer workshops. What we're going to do this year is send out a questionnaire asking you if you want to receive a hard copy of the materials that I'm talking about today. If you fill out that questionnaire with the address where you want us to send it, we will send you a packet. And the reason we're doing this is because a lot of you may not be going back to your physical school buildings. And we've always sent it directly to the school. So if you want us to send it to your home, just let us know and we'll be happy to provide you with one. So the rule book is new this year. This has been 2 years in the making. And so there are changes. I think most of the changes are good changes. In fact, I think all of them are good changes. I think it makes it more clear. For those of you who have been doing History Day for a long time, the changes in the rules affect the judges more than they affect you and your students. A good History Day project is still a good History Day project. However, I do want you to throw away your old rule books. Just get rid of all references to them. We've scrubbed all links from our website as well. And I also want to say that although History Day is a competition, the competition part of it is optional. You can take elements of History Day and incorporate them into your classroom and not have your students come to the contest. Although the contest is limited to students grades 6 through 12, we do have 5th and 4th grade teachers who are doing History Day projects in their classrooms. We don't have a competition set up for them now, but we can help you have a school competition if you want to add that to your program. All right, this is very small, but I just want you to know that on our website and on NHD's website is a 3-page document with the summary of significant rules changes. One thing I encourage you to do if you're getting into History Day, the best thing you can do for yourself is to sit down and read the rule book from cover to cover. I do this at the beginning of every season, so I think you should as well, and your students should also read the rule book. A couple of the significant rule changes that I want to point out are, in the paper category, a process paper is now going to be required. So for those of you who have not participated in National History Day before, the process paper is the story of how the students did their research. It's informal, it can be written in first person, and it answers these questions. How did you choose your topic and how does it relate to the annual theme? How did you conduct your research? How did you create your project? What is your historical argument, which here in Tennessee we call a thesis? And in what ways is your topic significant in history? So this is the students communicating directly with the judges. I chose Sequoia because I live in that part of that world and I've always been interested in the Cherokee. This does, for those of you who've been doing History Day for a long time, this has added the question, what is your thesis? So we want the students to be extremely explicit in telling us why they researched what they did. For the paper, in the past, the paper category has been a traditional academic paper. We have a lot of language arts teachers participated in History Day because they just take the class paper that was required and they turn it into a History Day project. The paper now also requires a process paper. So this gives the paper students a chance to sort of let their personality shine because they don't have to follow all the stylistic rules that a normal academic paper requires. I mean, we still want it formatted properly, but they can use I. They don't have to have footnotes in the process paper. One thing that we've had a lot of confusion over, and this is something I personally don't actually agree with National History Day on, but it is the rule. National History Day encourages students to do oral history interviews with people who have experienced the events. So with people who are primary sources. So if you're doing a project on Oak Ridge during World War II, and you can find one of the women who worked in the plants and interview that person, that is fantastic. National History Day loves that. National History Day does not want you to call up the department head at Maryville College and say, can I come interview you about the settlement of Tennessee? Now, why? That's a good question. Why is because the focus is really on primary sources, not on secondary sources, which is what an academic would be. I think another thing is I have had people complain to me, not about Tennessee students, but for example, the military curator at the Tennessee State Museum emailed me and she said, do I have to help this kid? And some kid had just sent her a list of 20 questions. And one of the questions was, how does my topic relate to the theme? So the kid was basically trying to get her to do all of his work for him. And I said, no, you do not have to pay attention to that. Just email him back and say, come back to me with 3 concrete questions instead of trying to get, do your work for you. So oral history interviews versus interviews with historians. This is the History Day's official statement. Interviewing an expert who was not involved in the event is a form of secondary source research. Interviews with experts are not required for History Day projects. You may be tempted to interview a professional historian about your topic. Do not. Okay? So this obviously means that topics that are 20th century topics, it'll be easier to find somebody who has experienced that. But again, oral history interviews and interviews are not required. They can add to it if you find the right person. Student voice has been added as something that the judges are looking for. And what we want when we mean student voice is, are the students using their own words? Are they coming to their own conclusions? So this sort of gets into distinguishing between plagiarism and sort of accidental inclusion of other people's work, which we see sometimes at the district and regional contests. It also allows the students, well, I tell the students, you can have an opinion. You can do a project on Pol Pot and come to the conclusion that Pol Pot was a bad guy. You don't want to have necessarily an agenda because you want to present both sides of an argument, but you don't have to be so scrupulously fair that you make a big point about how Hitler liked dogs and art. You are allowed, once you have thoroughly studied something, to say, you know, hey, maybe that wasn't such a great idea to send Native American children off to boarding school for years and years and years and separate them from their family and their culture. Okay, we have new judging rubrics. These rubrics are available on our website and on National History Day's website. You can use these in the process of building the projects. So you can give them to the students in advance and say, this is what the judges will be looking for. You can also use them for your school contests. You can use them yourselves when you're judging when you're grading the projects. And so let's take a little bit closer look at the documentary one. Historical quality is 80% of the rubric. And if you look over here to the side, historical argument is the very first thing the judges are going to look at. And again, in Tennessee, we call this a thesis. And this includes the annual theme. Is the theme woven throughout the project? Or is the connection unclear or not evident? In the left-hand column, what judges are going to be looking at are historical argument. Have the students done wide research? Do they have strong primary sources? Have they, oh, that should say context instead of contest. Have they provided the historical context? Have they looked at both sides of an argument or different sides of an argument? Are they accurate? Have they shown that the topic that they chose is significant in history? And do they have a voice? Are they using their own ideas to build their argument? 20% of the rubric is now devoted to clarity of presentation. And we call this the glitz factor. This is how fancy it is. This is how slick it is. Does the documentary have beautiful music that's appropriately interwoven and modulated throughout the entire thing? Have they looked at all of their images and provided nice, sharp, clear images, or are some of the images fuzzy? So the clarity of presentation is going to vary from category to category. So just to go through these quickly, for exhibit, are their written materials and visuals clear and readable, legible? In performance, how good is the actual performance? Are they projecting their voices? Have they blocked everything? Have they memorized the script? With the website, you know, do all the links work? Does the website flow properly throughout? So the hope is that the students are being judged on their research, not how cute they are, not how fancy their equipment is, not how beautifully they've costumed themselves or decorated their exhibit board. And then there is a section on the rubric that has a checklist for have they complied with all the rules. And then there's also room for the judges to make their comments. There are project checklists. Now, these are not used by the judges. These are for you and for the students. These are two-sided. And we'll take a closer look at what's on each project checklist, starting with documentary. There's a header with information for the students. You know, what's your word count for your process paper? How long is your documentary? Then we move into the general rules for the contest. Have you read the contest rule book? Is this your own work? Have you credited everybody? Does your topic relate to the theme? And then we have the specific rules for each category. And this asks them, can you set your documentary up in 5 minutes or less, because that's how much time they have in their interview. Is your documentary 10 minutes or less in length? And then there are the written materials. This is their process paper and their bibliography. And one thing I know that Lisa is really going to like, our regional coordinator, is the last thing down here is we did not enclose these materials in a binder or folder. Lisa gets after the kids because for some reason, even though the rule book says just give us the pieces of paper, they put it into a binder or folder because they think it looks fancy. And Lisa comes along and takes the binder and folder away and throws it away. So now they know not to do that. And then there's a place for them to sign where they also are indicating that this is their original work. On our website, the Getting Started section has links to all of these resources. I've also put them on the Padlet. I don't have the rulebook in Spanish yet, but when I get it, I will put the link up there. We don't have the Tennessee topics developed yet, but everything else I think has been linked, and I encourage you to go check it out. All right, so let's talk about deadlines. And let's talk about what we're going to do if we need to have virtual contests. We have 2 district contests. They are in Northeast Tennessee. The deadline for these is going to be in October. The contest that's held at Tusculum College is going to be on Friday, November 20th. And the qualifiers from this contest will advance to the East Tennessee contest, which is in Knoxville. When it comes to submitting projects, because we are assuming that some aspect of our contest season will have to be virtual, on the day of the student registration deadline, everything must be submitted on that day. In the past, we have made that the deadline for documentary, website, and paper. Exhibit and performance are now going to be due on the day of the registration deadline for the district contest, the regional contests, and the state contests, and the national contest. The regional contests will fall between about the middle of February to the first week of March. And one thing that we have been working on is putting together resources to help you deal with how do you do History Day virtually? How do you submit these projects? This is a lot of text here, but I wanted to convey to you that National History Day is committed to having a competition aspect this year, and so is the Tennessee Historical Society. We are going to proceed with the contest, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, but we are planning as if it will be virtual. So if you've had mock trial cancel on you, your robotics competition cancel on you, 4-H, anything else that the kids are involved in that has been canceled, know that History Day will still be here. Now, I am on the committee, the Virtual Guidelines Standardization Committee. We are hammering out different options now. And what we will do is we will provide you with instructions. How do you make an exhibit virtual? How do you make a performance virtual? Because those categories are for the kids who really like that tactile experience. How do we retain that they like, and then put the projects into a format that the judges can view and give feedback on? Virtual guidelines are going to be issued by National History Day as a supplement to the rule book. We will have assistance for both educators and students to help you, like, how do I turn this into a PDF? How do I put this PDF together with this PDF? When it comes to group projects, you're going to want to think about this carefully and look at ways for your students to collaborate online. Now, some kids have already been doing this. They already set up a Google Drive for themselves. And it might be something that's tied to the way that your school system is doing education this year. It might be something the students take on themselves. It might be something that you have to set up for them. So we can have options for you. We can offer suggestions to you. We can say, okay, well, these kids all use Noodle Tools, and that's how they worked on their bibliography. And if you have a classroom subscription to Noodle Tools, all of your students can get in there and work on their bibliographies. We're going to send out the link. We'll put it in the chat for you to do a survey. If you've done the survey before, you don't need to answer the questions, the qualitative questions that you've already answered. We do want your contact information and your school so that we can generate the certificates for attendance. The Padlet is up with all of the resources from today. And then we also will have, we'll send you the link for the recording for today. We also will have the recording on our website on the page for registration. And I saw somebody had asked how long the Padlet will be up. I can leave it up for as long as you need it to be up. I think we're allowed 3 free Padlets, so we will leave that up for quite a while. And I tell you what I can do. I can email everybody if I decide to take it down and say, I'm taking the Padlet down. If you want that information, get it now. But all of the information that we have put on there is also available on our website. So coming up, we have 2 more webinars left. Next Tuesday, Teaching with Primary Sources is going to tackle historical context. And on Wednesday, Becky Werner and Rebecca Bird, 2 of our National History Day teachers, are going to talk about incorporating National History Day either as an extracurricular activity or as a classroom project. I wanted to tell you that starting in the fall, Discover Tennessee History, which is a consortium that's comprised of 6 institutions from across the state, is going to have a webinar series. It'll be the first Tuesday of every month, starting at 4 p.m. Central Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to kick it off, and so it'll be, again, an introduction to Tennessee History Day for people who are new to the program. And then you can see that we also have all of our other institutions, and you all will be getting an email blast with the registration link for this and more content information about what each session is about. Okay, here's our contact info again, if you need to get in touch with us. And that is pretty much all I have for you all. I'm looking at the questions here.
There is a question from Stacy Knipp about clarifying the rule regarding creating a title, and does the theme have to be listed in the title?
Oh, it doesn't have to be in the title, but we recommend that. So the year that taking a stand was the theme, we had so many Rosa Parks projects, and I would say about half of them were just called Rosa Parks. And then a fourth of them were called Rosa Parks, Taking a Stand in History. And then the really good ones were called Rosa Parks, Sitting Down to Take a Stand. And so I tell people to touch upon the theme in the title, because the title of your project is like your handshake with the judges. It gives them a clue as to where you're going and how you're thinking. We had a project once called A Woman's Heart. You know, which woman, where? I have no idea what this project is about. And it turned out to be about Nancy Ward. And because we went and found out more about that project, we were able to nominate the student for a special award, which she ended up winning. But that's only because I said, I wonder if this is about something Native American. So it's not a rule, but it is best practices to include a nod to the theme in the title of the project.
Jennifer, I also have got a question about your timeline. Could you go back to that real quick and just review when projects are due?
Yes, I can do that, except I stopped sharing. Let me try it again. Share screen. Okay. So we have basically what I want to get across to you is History Day projects need to be completed by winter break. You need to start on this as soon as you're back in the classroom or the virtual classroom, because as we have learned, things can change quickly and you can be locked out of your school and your exhibits can be in the closet of your classroom and you might never see them again. So when it comes to our regional contests and our district contests, which are in Northeast Tennessee, these are smaller. We have one regional contest at Lincoln Memorial University in Harrogate, and we have one at Tusculum University in Greenville. We don't expect perfection out of these projects. What we're doing is kind of narrowing the field a bit so that the students who qualify from these contests will go on to the regional contest at East Tennessee. So for most people who are in the rest of the state, we will open registration for the regional contests at the beginning of December. Teachers, you will need to have yourself registered by the day after Martin Luther King Day, and that's so we know you're out there and you exist and you plan on competing. Projects must be submitted by Monday, February 1st for the regional contests. That's because we need at least 3 weeks to get them turned around, farmed out to the judges, get the judges' comments, and get ready for those particular contests. Generally, our contests start around the 20th of February and go through the first week of March. So those are the regional contests. We've not yet set a date for the state contest. It's usually the first Saturday in April. And that's because we can't make those reservations yet. We normally have War Memorial Auditorium and Tennessee Tower and Nashville Public Library as the locations for our state contest. And all of those venues are currently closed and there are no gatherings in them. So we have been told as soon as they open registrations, we're first in line to get our pick of days, but I can't commit to a date yet. If we have a virtual contest, it will be the first Saturday in April. If we have a physical contest, I am hoping to have it the first Saturday in April.
Jennifer, if I can add, those of y'all that were on the webinar that have participated before in East Tennessee's region, we were not able to get the space we needed in the student union on UT campus for our traditional First Friday. So it's going to be a little different. So go ahead and plug in March the 8th. I know that Jennifer has that most of it will be done by March 1st. We will probably be the last of the regional competitions this year because typically we're the week before. But that's the only date we could really get where we'd have we use the entire new student union on UT campus. So just so folks can make a note, and of course that will be coming out. And let me say too, this, I know for many of you that, you know, the 77% that haven't participated before, this is a lot. It's a big chunk. Your regional coordinators, which I'm the one for East Tennessee, we're here to help you, and Jennifer can get you in touch with us. So please reach out, and there's no way you can't do everything just right off the bat, immediately ready to implement. It's going to be different for all of us this year. So we're happy to brainstorm and help however we can.
Okay, are there any slides I need to go back to?
If I could take a moment to talk about attendance briefly, Jennifer. I have put a list of participants that I have marked absent through the chat. So if you are on this list and you're here, you need to tell me that you're here. But if you do not see your name on this list, you are present. So you don't need to tell me that you're here if your name is not on this list. Also, I have a telephone number without a name associated. It is 901-828-4705. If that's you, could you please just unmute yourself and tell me who you are?
Hi, this is Kathy Hinkie. I'm the one with the phone number.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, that's all for attendance.
Yeah, so if you would please remember to go back and check that list. Make sure if you are here and your name's on that list that you let Hannah know so she can mark you present. And just a quick reminder, again, next week we have our last 2 sessions in this series. We will be doing historical context on Tuesday with our TPS MTSU team. And then on Wednesday, we'll be talking about National History Day as either an extracurricular activity or as a classroom project. And I know we had a question in there in the chat box about how to work this in with all of your standards. And that is really going to be the focus of that discussion next week. I think we've got a couple of different guest presenters who do this a couple of different ways in their classrooms, kind of sharing their experiences. So that will be our topic then. And will be a good discussion about different ways to approach this given all of the things that you're asked to do in the course of your teaching. And again, remember, if you have missed one of the previous sessions, you can go back and watch those on our TPS MTSU YouTube page. All of the videos are there. We'll have today's video posted later this afternoon. All right, and lastly, feedback. Again, we do want to hear your feedback from today's session. Do take a moment to fill out the form. Again, even if you've attended past sessions, we do need you to complete the form for each individual session that you participate in. So if one of you guys could drop the link for that in the chat box for folks to more easily get to. We would appreciate you filling that out. And again, that will help us just as we think about future programming as well. All right. So again, thank you guys for attending today's session. We really appreciate your time and attention. We're going to stick around on here. If you guys have questions that you wanted to ask us individually, we'll be here for a few minutes afterwards. If not, again, fill out that survey and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks.